It's a damn chest. Slut. Fucking China. Street war. You suck my dick. You suck my dick. Street war. Watch the goddamn game, you goddamn bitch. This shit? No. Hit. You suck, bud.
Somebody else there. He was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out with a rubber bag.
Easy, Emily. Let's see her spit on him. Wish pit. Oh, my form is longer than hers. Wish pit smells. I already bought this bitch. Motherfuckers are making me buy goddamn thing. God fucking damn it. You suck my dick, bitch. Let's play some more goddamn songs. You suck my dick, bitch. Suck my slut. You suck my dick. You suck my dick, bitch. Suck my slut. God damn it. Goddamn tacos.
I wanna feel you.
Okay, start the goddamn game, goddamn thing, goddamn bitch, motherfucker. You suck, motherfucker.
I wanna feel you. I wanna taste the words we found.
You suck, motherfucker. You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick. You suck my dick, bitch. And a shit. Goddamn motherfucker. You suck my dick, bitch. Spit. God, fuck, damn. Oh, damn, God, damn, God, damn, God, damn, God, God, fucking damn it. I can pull your fucking string. Son of a bitch. You suck my dick, 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 bitch. Can't move you goddamn slut that slut rhyme before you a black ass Stalin. I ain't talking to Joseph Stalin, I'm talking about Stalin. China. You suck my dick. You suck my dick. God fuck it. You suck my dick, bitch. 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 God damn it, I fucked up. God fucking damn it. You suck my dick, bitch. Suck my dick, bitch. You 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 suck my dick. You suck my dick, bitch.
Hey guys, it's John sitting here in the studio with my mug of water. Already finished my coffee today. I hope that you're doing well wherever you are. You know, in many of my videos, I reference the fact that Christianity is the deadliest religion in the world. And I often get people who come at me saying, it is not, it's Islam that is the deadliest. Well, I thought if I'm going to make those claims, I should actually back you up with the real statistics. What is the most violent religion in history? Well, statistically, the deadliest religion is Christianity, but especially under Catholicism. The truth is even darker than most believers want to admit. What's really interesting about the modern Christian ideology is that they try to demonize Islam. Well, Islam is a religion that, like Christianity, is based in peace and love, but has these atrocities within them that create division and hate. The fact that they have both religions have given up the idea that we're all humans on this planet and that you have to believe in a certain ideology, it creates the division, it creates the violence. But what happens when you actually look at the numbers? Because the numbers don't lie. The numbers are exactly what
Amen. The numbers
tell us
which religion
is the deadliest.
Big numbers on social
Christianity, especially through Catholicism, has been responsible for more death and cultural annihilation and more than any other religion in human history. And it's not even close. Islam does not even come close. the native cultures were wiped out by Catholicism. South and Central America were so wiped out by Catholicism that Pope Francis apologized to South and Central America for what the Catholic Church did. The Spanish and Portuguese conquests in the 15th to 17th centuries were explicitly backed by the Church. In the papal bulls like Dum Diversus in 1452 and the Inter Terra in 1493 gave kings permission to enslave and conquer in the name of Christianity. Entire civilizations were destroyed. The Aztec, the Maya, the Inca. Estimated deaths in Native American genocide estimates between 50 and 100 million deaths across North and South America due to the conquest, slavery, disease spread through colonial policy, and missionary enforcement. That death toll exceeds any religious conflict in Islamic history. In the 16th century, Bartolomé de las Casas said, and he was a Spanish priest, he said, "What we committed in the Indies stands out among the most unpardonable offenses ever committed against God and mankind."
Bullshit, there's only
they
one
didn't get into the Inquisition and the religious terror of that. Catholic persecution of other Christians. America was formed by people running away from Catholicism, and then that Christian branch came to the Americas and wiped out the Native Americans and persecuted and drove them off their lands. And when I was, I'm from the east coast of the United States, and you always see like the Lenape this, the Lenape that. The Lenape tribe was based in Delaware. Now they're based in Oklahoma. Why? Because they were marched there by the conquerors who came in to flee religious persecution of the Catholics. The Catholic Inquisition, the Lenape tribe was based in Delaware. Now they're based in Oklahoma. Why? Because they were marched there.
This is boring!
This is Red Pen Logic with Mr. B, where we help you assess bad thinking by using good thinking.
Wait a minute. Strike that. Reverse it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and natural...
You suck my dick, bitch.
Consent has unfortunately become kind of a loaded word because it is so typically associated as a buzzword for the progressive left, which is stupid because it shouldn't be tied...
That's the video I want to fucking see. God, fuck it. Where's the next fucking game, you son of a bitch?
Hello and welcome back to Skepticus. Today we are diving into a piece of internet filth that comes from our good buddy Frank Turek. I'm just going to call it the hatiest hate that Christians ever hated. So without trying to explain this in advance, let's just get into this video.
Now, and anyway, one of the three apparently is this couple, this same-sex married couple of men with two sons. And Christians came out online and basically pointed out that I don't think this is something you ought to be doing as a Christian couple, is trying to normalize same-sex relationships. And in fact...
Okay, so that's the first place I have to jump in. This whole idea that just having these people on a TV show is normalizing it is patently absurd and absolutely hateful. Now, it's one thing to say, hey, if we want to have them in our church and we don't believe in this as a church, then for our church this would be normalizing it. But guess what? Gay people exist. You can call it normalizing it all you want, but they've been normal for hundreds and thousands of years. Now you may have ostracized them according to the hateful dogma that's in your crappy holy book, but that doesn't change the fact that gay people are normal people. And to imply otherwise is exposing your rotten, festering core of a religion.
The same-sex couple on the program basically said that they're excited about being on the program to make their relationship and relationships like this more acceptable, more normal in American society.
Come on, you
Anyway, Christians came out very hard against Chip and Joanna.
Imagine that. Christians came out very hard with their pitchforks and their torches in a hateful mob. Who'd have thunk it?
And I think probably in many cases they went over a line in their criticism. I mean, you can correct people without being an obnoxious scold, okay? And I want to give Chip and Joanna the benefit of the doubt, but I'm also going to point out that I think what they're doing here is wrong. Anyway, what happened?
Yes. He thinks that having a
Does she
gay
have a
couple
spitty face
on a
on?
television show is wrong. Because according to him, and according to many, many Christians who hold with a literal translation of the Bible's sexual purity laws, he believes that these people should not be seen. Pay attention to what he's saying. And this is consistent with so much of the rest of Christianity here. He wants you
now, I'm talking
gay
Joseph
people
Stalin. I'm talking about
back
Stalin.
in the damn closet. This is so consistent with the way that so many Christians treat this. To be clear, I will put the disclaimers out there. Of course, this is not all of Christianity.
I wish they would
We've
get
seen
back
a
to
big
big fucking
schism since gay marriage was approved in this country.
I wish
And
this
there are
nation was like it
denominations
was
that are
back in the
splitting off,
80s.
and there are Christians that are choosing sides.
1983.
And I'm not saying that this is all of Christianity, although I will tell you this. If you want to read the scriptures literally, it is not very favorable at all to any kind of same-sex relationship. Now, there is some nuance to it that most Christians don't want to dive into and they don't want to admit. It's not nearly as black and white as they would have you believe. But despite some of my liberal friends who will try to tell you that no, the bans in the Bible are against pedophilia and they're not against homosexuality, that's incorrect. Despite some people claiming that this is part of an old law that doesn't apply anymore, I mean, that's just in the eye of the beholder. There are incredible inconsistencies in the Bible on this matter, and there are over-the-top inconsistencies with the way that Christians pick and choose their morality around this issue. But the simple fact is that it doesn't take much searching to look through the Bible and find the hatred right there in the pages. But this crap that he's talking about is consistent with the way that so many Christians address this issue. They don't want anyone to ever be doing this in their bedroom, even if it has no impact on them whatsoever. But if it has to happen, they want you in the damn closet. They want you right back in 1962. They want to know that nobody ever has to see a gay person on TV. And no one ever wants to know that there are gay people in their town. And they want to be able to carry on their blissful, hate-filled life with their heads stuck way up their Christian backside, knowing that they never have to be confronted with the horrible, dirty, awful truth that there are gay people out there in the world. If they can't get rid of you with gas chambers and pitchforks, at least they can try to beat you back into a closet where they will never have to think or deal with you again.
As a result of this, is that Chip put out a tweet that went like this after all this criticism they got for doing this program. He said, and it's abbreviated, it might be a little hard to understand, but anyway, he said, talk, ask questions, listen, and maybe even learn. Too much to ask of modern American Christian culture. Judge first, understand later / never. It's a sad Sunday when non-believers have never been confronted with hate or vitriol until they are introduced to the modern American Christian, unquote. So that was his response, and several people tried to ask what I say, in some of them in a very kind way, Chip, that doesn't cut it. In fact, Beckett Cook, I don't know if you know.
Of course that doesn't cut it. Because there's nothing an American Christian loves more than judging the hell out of everyone. And to even imply that they would take this judgment away from you basically means that you're taking some of the most fun aspects out of Christianity for most people.
Becket Cook was a same-sex attracted man for many years. He may still be, as far as I know, but he was working in Hollywood, in the Hollywood industry, as a same-sex attracted, actively gay man.
As a same-sex attracted, yeah, it's just called a gay man. You don't have to keep pulling out this huge term of same-sex attracted. He was and is a gay man.
Here's what Becket said to Chip Gaines's tweet that I just read. He said, "Respectfully, Chip, that doesn't work. You can't platform a gay family on your show, further normalizing it and cry foul. You're unintentionally leading many astray."
This is such a sick example of the Christian mindset. The idea that if there are two gay people on a television show that you are platforming, first of all, it's incredibly dishonest and disingenuous. That has nothing to do with what platforming is. Platforming does not simply mean that someone of a certain ilk somehow gets on a platform. Platforming means that somebody who already has a very large platform essentially allows that person to come on and spew their views or sway people in their favor, when in fact the platform may be out of proportion with the support this person or this idea actually has. In other words, if you had someone with a very large platform, imagine that it was Alex O'Connor, and he just has a gay couple come on his show, and he just gives them an hour to just talk and doesn't ask them any hard questions about, well, what do you think this says about Christian beliefs, or do you think this is consistent with Christianity? But he just lets them talk however they want. That would be platforming. But this is a television show where people are put in this full environment where they're supposed to be acting like they're in the 1800s. And it's not like every single instant that they are on camera, they are advocating for everyone to have a gay lifestyle. Not that that would even be that big of a deal. But to call this platforming exposes the desires of the people that would throw around such a term. Because I'll say again, if you think that having a gay couple just on a TV show somehow qualifies as platforming them, it's because you would prefer that they simply be in the closet. You want them out of sight and out of mind, so that you don't ever have to deal with the fact that the entire world is not hetero like you. And it's really disgusting that he pulls up this example of this individual who apparently is gay and decided to become Christian, which is fine. I've had gay friends that are Christian and have converted to Christianity, and that's fine. I personally think it's a little misguided, but there's all kinds of personal bias when I say that. If you find value in Christianity, then fine, be Christian. But the idea that you're gay and then you decide to be Christian shouldn't mean that you're then given some added voice with which to shout down other gay people in a public environment.
Of course we need to love our gay neighbors, but we also need to tell the truth. This is how I was led to the Lord, not by squishy Christians, but by loving Christians who told me the truth.
This is such a disgusting concept. Of course, we love our gay neighbors, but we also have to tell them the truth. If your religion says that old white guys all burn in hell, and you move in next door to me, do you have a responsibility to come over and tell me that as an old white guy, I'm going to burn in hell? If you think that you have that responsibility, it's because your religion is disgusting and revolting. The idea that you love your gay neighbors, but we need to tell them that they're in sin and they're going to hell is one of pure, unadulterated hatred and bigotry. And the only people
it's so
that
fucking
don't
sick and tired
understand
of
that
people
are the hateful bigots
talking
themselves.
about bigotry.
I don't care what you are doing in your home. If it is not hurting anyone else, if it is between consenting adults, even if I don't like it, even if it disgusts me, as long as it is between consenting adults, not only should you have every right to do it, but I have no right whatsoever to come over and bang on your door and tell you that you're going to hell, or to try to get you taken off of TV programs, or to try to shout down to people who would have the nerve to put you on a TV program. That is just a disgusting position, and it just exposes the pure hatred of this doctrine.
Unquote. Indeed, Beckett is
God
correct. Love, by the way, does not mean approval. Every parent knows this. If you reflect on this, you know love does not mean approval. I mean, if you approve of everything your 13-year-old wants to do, are you loving? No, you're unloving. You're enabling evil. And Beckett is claiming that if you tell people the truth, that is the right way to love people. And he is correct.
No, he's hateful. Because you don't have to just run up and tell people what is your truth, which, by the way, is not the truth, it is your truth. There is a very simple rubric here, that if you're a grown-ass person, you can apply, but if your mental maturity is this big, you won't understand it. People talk about truth. Hey, I'm talking the truth. I'm just telling the truth. Or, as people have said before, hey, I'm just keeping it real, man. I'm just keeping it real. But you know what? There's a lot of shit that's true that doesn't need to come out of your mouth. There's a lot of shit that's true that you have no business even speaking. And if you're a grown-ass person who has any mental maturity or empathy or caring for your fellow man, you should not just be working off of this rubric.
This is boring as fuck. Move, you slant-eyed slut. I'm gonna put your goddamn fucking black ass for stone. Fucking.
The historical Jesus question oftentimes is an enigma, but something about Dr. James D. Tabor brings it down to earth and really makes me think. Here we have a Jewish man who, just like the predecessors we find in the Qumran sects, and those that are reading their scriptures around this time, were expecting an end to draw near.
What? Stupid! Cause I was fucking.
It almost seems like he's figuring out, putting his finger on, what this Jesus figure was like, how John the Baptist plays a significant role, and his brother named James.
You stupid son of a bitch. You stupid fucker. Absent-minded bitch. You suck my cock, bitch. Cause I was fucking black, cause I was fucking black stupid. You mighty black there, so bitch. I'm fucking you up.
Dr. James D. Tabor, thank you so much for your time today.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, so discussing the historical Jesus. I do this all the time on Mythician. For a long time, I was a very devout Christian. I believed Jesus was God in the flesh. You know the spiel. Then I had my doubts, and I really started to, without going into my whole testimony, started doubting when you find out there's a lot of stuff that isn't historically true and reliable. You almost throw the baby out with the bathwater for me. And it was, there's nothing here. It's all a myth. I mean, I was even entertaining the idea that the New Testament was astrotheology, a symbol of the sun moving through the 12 zodiacs, all sorts of stuff. You can find stuff online. Then I realized as I started taking my little metaphorical brush to the dirt, there was a fossil peeking through. And I said, is there more? And I started looking and realizing there is a fossil there. So I became a historicist personally. However, I entertain all ideas.
Sure.
you are a historicist like me, but what kind? And this is the question to ask you today is, what kind of Jesus have you found?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, a lot of us who work in Christian origins or New Testament, we finally write a Jesus book. Usually it's at the culmination of part of our career, not necessarily the end. I waited till I was 60 years old. And just so you know my age, that was 15 years ago. And so in 2006, I published a book called The Jesus Dynasty. Something like the hidden history of Jesus and his royal family and whatever. Subtitle, Simon & Schuster, bestseller, New York Times. It got amazing attention. I was on Nightline, 2020, Good Morning America, let's see, U.S. News All Report, cover story, all over Europe. It went into 26 languages. It was huge. I thought the controversy would be, oh, you say Jesus had a biological father. Or, oh, you say his tomb has been found, maybe with his bones in it. Maybe. The Tokyo tomb.
Right.
And it has all that in it. But when you remember Martin Bashir, he's so famous for interviewing Princess Diana in that famous interview. He was the guy who went to Israel and hung out with me for 2 weeks, and I took him all over, and we did many, many hours of interviewing. And that's what appeared, I think, on the 2020 show. And he said, James, we've always been taught that there was one Messiah, but you have a chapter on the two Messiahs. And I was just so shocked. I thought he was going to do Pantera, maybe Father Jesus, or the Tokyo tomb. He wanted to talk about the two Messiahs, like that was the shocker of the book. Well, since I work on the Dead Sea Scrolls, which clearly have two Messiahs, and if you look carefully at the prophetic text, particularly Zechariah chapter 6, the son of David's going to sit on his throne and there will be a priest by his side. It's a pretty common view in Second Temple Judaism. There are lots of texts, and I mention them in the book and document this, that you're expecting two Messiahs. Forget the word Christ, it's not his last name. Most of your listeners and viewers know that. I always say listeners, viewers, because they're watching. It means anointed one, chosen one, and you anoint priests and kings. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Every priest from Aaron on in the Bible is a Messiah. And every king from Saul on is a Messiah. They're anointed, and it's sort of like the oath of inauguration for the president.
I go, what advice for you? Resign.
Long live the king, and I anoint you king of Israel, then you're the king. Just like the oath of office with any kind of a political office. So you're the anointed one, the chosen one. So the question is, was there a priest Messiah as well? And what I developed in the book, I open with this idea. Once the book, I have a preface about some other things to sort of pull people in about archaeology. Because a lot of the book is things I found or worked on directly. So all through the book, I emphasize those. I also commissioned paintings to go in the book that would fit. Special by Beloge, who's this wonderful archaeological artist. And what I began to do is to talk about John the Baptist as the first
I fucked his whole
Jesus movement.
Now that was a
It's
white
really not
man's
the
chance.
Jesus movement as much as the John the Baptist movement. Like he kicks it off. But the two boys are apparently related. Mary, according to Luke, goes to see Elizabeth for 3 months, and the baby's born during that time. And I would think Jesus and John were together many times because they would go up to the festivals 3 times a year. These are their relatives. They would all get together in caravans and tents and so forth. And so when John begins preaching, Jesus joins the movement. And I think he looks to John as his teacher. So this is pretty controversial. That might be what Martin Bashir was kind of thinking. Wait, Christ, like, what do you mean? There's like another one, and is he more important or less? And I show in the book that if you look at the Gospels, when Jesus is first baptized in Mark, there's no objection at all. Matthew, there's an objection, like, well, maybe you should baptize me, John says, because you're so great. So you see how it's progressing.
There's a problem.
And then Luke doesn't even mention, he just says, when he was baptized, the Holy Spirit came upon him. It's sort of implied. And then John doesn't, it just says, John said, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. So you go out to Mark, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee to be baptized by John. He joins the movement. He teams up with him. Then they split and not break up, but split the work. And the work is proclaiming the imminence of the kingdom of God. The time is fulfilled, the kingdom of God is at hand. Maybe working out of the book of Daniel or something like that, the 70 weeks, I don't know, but they had some calculation. Jesus, John's up in the north, preaching and teaching, and on my tours, I point out the Jesus hideout in Jordan. Now, we don't cross and go into it, but there's a text where Jesus, the last few months of his life, is fleeing his enemies. They try to stone him, and it says he went across the Jordan from where John was baptizing, and it's this wadi where Elijah hid. It's called the Brook Kerith in the Hebrew Bible. So anyway, Jesus and John are very connected, and John is up there where he basically is from there, where Elijah the Tishbite lived. Jesus goes down south, and he's preaching in the south, presumably the same message, and he's baptizing disciples just like John. So have you ever wondered, what would a person be if they were baptized by Jesus? I mean, where do you have Jesus baptizing anybody except this one passage in the Gospel of John? And it says that Jesus was more successful in getting
stupid.
So I think they're teamed up.
Stupid.
In the earliest texts that are the original, the sayings of Jesus that Matthew and Luke know, some people call it Q, I don't care what you call it, but it's a sayings tradition, let's call it, that both of them are aware of. Jesus says, among those born of women, there's not a man. And then somebody added, but he who is least in the kingdom is greater than him. I think that's an interpolation. Because people are like, whoa, that would make John greater than Jesus, because Jesus was born of a woman. It's a huge, huge problem later. So let's just make it spiritually greater, like when we're all in the kingdom, even the least will be greater than John. Well, that doesn't negate what he just said. Among those born of women, there's none greater than John. He also said, what did you go out to see when you went out to watch John or listen to John? A prophet? Like, yeah, a prophet. I tell you more than a prophet. This is the one that's prophesied in Malachi chapter 3. The messenger who's going to prepare the way for the end, for the coming. So in Zechariah, Malachi, you have this idea of two messiahs. We also have it at Qumran. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls have the two messiahs. They never showed up. The teacher is their priestly teacher. He's called the teacher of righteousness. We don't know his name. I think 1st century BC. Then he dies. They expect the end in 40 years, kind of like the Christians with Jesus. Probably expect him to come back, and he doesn't. But the Messiahs never showed up. But they do talk about, we're going to hold fast the faith until the coming of the Messiah of Aaron and Israel. They actually say that. Messiah of Israel is the king over the nation. Messiah of Aaron, Aaron is the priest. Two messiahs, And when the heavenly banquet, not the heavenly, the kingdom banquet is pictured in the scrolls, the two messiahs are sitting there, and the priest blesses the bread. See, he's more the spiritual leader. The king is more like the president, the executive. And it says there'll be a council of peace between the two. But you're kind of looking to the priest, because the priest is supposed to be teaching the true word of God. That's in Malachi. Today people think of the priest, the guy that cut the throats of the animals. That's what he did. But that wasn't the original idea. It would be the person who is a specialist in teaching the Torah. So that was a shock.
And I do present that, the two messiahs. I think people are more adjusted to it now. It's not such a surprising thing when you learn all the other texts that contain that.
Which in reality you're saying this fits Jesus and John.
And it electrified the countryside because probably a lot of former Qumranites that had maybe given up because the end was supposed to come 4 years after the teacher, and then it delayed and delayed and delayed. Now we're in the first century, and yet these two dynamic characters show up, and they think, "Oh wow, maybe this is it." So who knows? Eisenman calls it the Messianic movement, and there's no idea. It would be the person who teaches.
Oh, this dumbass
teaching the Torah. So that was a shock. And I do present that, the two messiahs. I think people are more adjusted to it now. It's not such a surprising thing when you learn all the other texts that contain that.
Which in reality you're saying this fits Jesus and John.
And it electrified the countryside because probably a lot of former Qumranites that had maybe given up because the end was supposed to come 4 years after the teacher, and then it delayed and delayed and delayed. Now we're in the first century, and yet these two dynamic characters show up, and they think probably a lot of former Qumranites that had maybe given up because the end was supposed to come 4 years after the teacher, and then it delayed and delayed and delayed. Now we're in the first century, and yet these two dynamic characters show up, and they think, "Oh wow, maybe this is it." So who knows? Eisenman calls it the Messianic movement in Palestine, he says. The Messianic movement, meaning it starts all the way back with the Maccabees and it goes all the way down through, basically to 70 AD and even Bar Kokhba. It's people who wanted the kingdom to come. I do present in the book that Jesus stands out as different. And here probably would differ with certain people that would say he's militant, like Brandon and I think maybe Robert Eisenman. I don't think he's militant in the sense of I want to gather arms and do guerrilla warfare against Rome. I would take some of his sayings about put away your sword and so forth as probably being genuine. But he does believe in inaugurating this, what he calls the seed of the kingdom, by defeating Satan. He's a great believer in the powers of darkness. If I, by the finger of God, cast out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you.
I'm fixing to stick my dick in your...
Don't look here or there for the kingdom is right within you. Meaning, if we're going to bring about the kingdom, we have to change. It's not a military power that comes in and does it for us. So I think he had unconventional ideas. He says, love your enemies, turn the other cheek. These are sayings of Jesus that some of the more skeptical scholars would say, yeah, that sounds probably like Jesus. Is he a pacifist? That is probably the wrong word, because I think he's perfectly willing for God to intervene and cause lots of fireworks. But that would be God, not him futilely gathering arms. And what do the Romans do to all the other messiahs who gather arms? They behead them or crucify them invariably. And he knows that. And
stupid fucker.
I think he believes that somehow the kingdom will be vindicated. So I go through in the book really kind of chronologically, starting with John the Baptist and the two messiahs and his teachings. But I call it the Jesus dynasty because what people have forgotten. My students don't even know who James is. They go like, James, the brother? I didn't know he had brothers. Remember, I started teaching at Notre Dame, and the official teaching of the church is Joseph didn't have kids and Mary didn't either. So who are these brothers?
That's right.
They're the children of Joseph's brother, Clopas, and so forth. So I cover all of that, and I try to present as much as possible what it was like in that time. Lots of archaeology, lots of history. Where I do differ with my colleagues, some of them, on 2 points. I absolutely think he was the Davidic Messiah. And the earliest testimony of that is Paul in Romans 1. Paul's letters are before the Gospels. And Paul said he's descended
from David according to the flesh. I mean, that's the tradition he received. See no reason to doubt it. It would be ludicrous for him to say that if he didn't, have evidence of that. Because right away everybody would say, what are you talking about? He's from Naphtali or Ishkar or something else in the Galilee. So I do think he thought he was the Davidic Messiah. He does reflect the agenda of Isaiah 11, the spirit of meekness and humility, and blessed are the poor.
I'm fixing that ear, you're
right.
Stupid motherfucker.
He talks about the 12 tribes being reunited. That's right out of Isaiah 11. So I think he's self-consciously believing that he's the Messiah. So that's one thing that some of my colleagues, it's very common today for people to say, I don't think he thought he was the Messiah.
Dumbass, you fucking dumbass.
The other thing will really surprise you, and it's on my blog,
fuck his.
and that is that he anticipated
absent-minded fucker.
And
man, I
there's
fucked
two new
my
books
butt.
out, Michael Wise and Israel Knoll, both dealing with the first Messiah, which is the Qumran Messiah. They call the teacher the Messiah. But in the course of that, they talk about how the teacher of righteousness anticipated his sufferings, both of them. By the way, their books were published months apart. Neither knew the other was writing this. And they argue that Isaiah 53 and the suffering servant passages are messianic, and that the teacher began to apply them to himself and basically tell his followers, I'm going to be persecuted. Whether he said I'll die, I don't know. Now, I don't mean that he said I'll be raised and all that. That I think is later. But I think when John was killed, he quotes the scripture, strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. And my hand will be against the little ones. And I think that shattered him. Because it's like, we're not going to march to Jerusalem and take over. John's dead. And so John's going to have to be raised from the dead at some point. So we have to wait for the end. And then I think he began to wonder about whether he is mentioned in various texts. And I think he began to see in the four servant hymns references to himself as suffering and bringing redemption. But what Christians miss, that Dietrich Bonhoeffer understood, the famous theologian who opposed Hitler and died for it, is when Christ calls a person, Jesus, and he calls you also to take up a cross and follow. So it's not this singular, I'm the suffering servant, I now see myself. It's like, no, I see that the way that this kingdom is going to come is that we all have to face the suffering.
Suck my dick.
So if you want to follow me, you have to come. I think he began telling his followers some version of that. We're going to go to Jerusalem. It's not going to be pretty. And we're going to go in the temple. I'm going to declare it a den of shredders, robbers. We talked about that. I'm going to quote Jeremiah, and I'm going to predict its destruction based on prophecies in Daniel. But I do think that he anticipated his death. Resurrection, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's Psalm 22. I don't know what to do with that. Did Jesus cry out and say that, or was it written later? Theologians say, God had to turn his back on sin so he couldn't look at Jesus.
There's all sorts of magical
God
tricks.
fucking
Just a quick question that you brought up in the Qumran.
I got a little tickle in my throat, but I'm okay.
It's okay. In Isaiah 53, that originally, that messianic claim, we're talking about late 1st century BC. I mean, this is already in the Qumran scrolls, right? Being used this way, aiming at Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, it went through a few candidates before it got to Jesus.
Yeah.
And
The teacher, where we find it in the scrolls, two places. One is the Habakkuk picture. And it says that the teacher's gone, and the end didn't come, and we still need to have faith, and the just will have faith and believe God, and will be saved through our faith in the teacher and our suffering. This is actually in the Habakkuk picture. So here you have the Qumran people saying we got to believe in the teacher, and we're going to suffer. And in the Thanksgiving hymns, the middle part are in the first person. They're autobiographical. And that, if you haven't ever read them, you should read the middle portion of the Thanksgiving hymns. because you'll think you're reading about Jesus, and yet it's 100 years before. He who dips his hand in the dish with me has lifted up his heel against me. Teacher says that too because he had a guy who broke away and opposed him. He calls him the liar who left the community. And there's all these parallels. My mother and father abandoned me, but the Lord took me up, and things like this. And you get a psychology of messianism by reading those. But there is the suffering, for sure. He says, no one is like me in wisdom or in my wounds, my trials. So he's actually saying the suffering brings the redemption. And of course, Paul picks up on that too. When Paul gets all into the glory in Romans 8, that's his great chapter about the glorification of the children of God. And he says, provided we suffer with them, that we may be glorified with them. So Paul's always talking about his sufferings. But he expects other people to do it as well. And that's the part where the people in the pews are kind of like, whoa, like I should sell what I have and I should get, basically crucified. Take up a cross is not, it's like, take a stand and get killed. So I can't claim to be following that,
Right.
I have a house, a car, a wife, a family, and I would like some kind of stability in my life. But I love Schweitzer's quote, quoted it to you before, that he threw his might against the wheel of history to try to pull it forward, and it lunged back and crushed him. So for Schweitzer, he really did want to bring the kingdom of God. And what is the kingdom
Come on,
of
you
God?
slut. Would you please move your
Love
forward?
your enemies, peace, justice,
Fucking bitch.
men and women together, slave and free, kind of egalitarian idealism. Yeah, get the
Come
book,
on, you
man.
fucking bitch.
It's my best take. I wouldn't change a lot of it. I still
Come on, you
understand with it.
fucking bitch.
But probably the biggest
Come on,
thing
you
is the
fucking
outreach,
bitch.
that he really takes over the movement. So it's very
Fucking
important,
bitch.
and nobody talks about it. Think it is a dynasty. It's a caliphate.
Go check out The Caliphate, The Dynasty of Jesus. That's the book, The Jesus
God
Dynasty.
damn it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. It's been great.
God damn it. God damn it. God damn it. I fucked up. Now I'm gonna get a dick. I see a dick in my fucking future. Come on, you fucking slut. Come on, you fucking slut.
Hello everyone. In this video I want to begin exploring a new topic. I'm calling it the fading of the family, and by the family I mean the Jesus family. So I see this as a kind of a mini-series, and in this first video...
You're probably wondering what this is. To ancient Babylon, this wasn't a monster. It was a spiritual being sent to guide humanity. They were almost like Babylon's version of angels. Almost. But the Bible saw something different. Something disturbing. This strange fish figure connects directly to one of the Bible's weirdest mysteries, a moment almost nobody talks about. In Genesis 6, the Bible describes a time before the flood, when angels came down to earth and had children with human women, producing giants called the Nephilim. And the next thing you know, God sends flood to reset the entire human race. That is not a coincidence. So why is this bizarre passage in the Bible at all? Well, scholars now believe it was written as a warning, and it was written because of beings like this. Now, ancient people probably didn't believe there were actual fish people running around. The fish imagery likely symbolized where they were said to have been born, in the cosmic waters. But the human race really was in deep trouble, and there is still a danger today, and it has something to do with this story. A quick disclaimer, the following Apollo story is not scripture, But I can promise you it's going to give you background info that will unlock hidden layers of Genesis. Meet the Akalu, ancient Babylon's greatest heroes. They were 7 sages that were said to have been sent from the gods to teach humanity wisdom and help civilize them before the flood. Ancient stories said they taught us stuff like magic, medicine, architecture, writing. In art, they look like this: part fish, part human, hybrid beings. And later, men wearing fish cloaks. While you and I would probably picture angels doing God's work on earth, Babylonians pictured these guys doing their God's work on earth. And no one feared them, at least not at first. According to Babylon, the Akalu were here to help civilization along. You can see how they were supposed to help us in a scene from a recent Marvel superhero movie, Eternals, who are almost certainly based on the Akalu. Here, they're even living in Babylon. Marvel scrapped the part about looking like fish, but I guess they didn't think a movie about fish people would be very marketable. But in this scene, Babylon's angel figures are doing their job, debating the best way to help humans along.
Humanity may be coming along slower than some of us want.
Until something went terribly...
Humanity may be coming along slower than some of us want.
Until something went terribly wrong. This is Fastos. He's specifically in charge of teaching humans advanced technology. He wants to show ancient people how to build the steam engine to help them till their fields faster. But the other Eternals argue that humans are not ready for this yet.
It's gonna freak them out.
I mean, they only have had to wait 1,000 years.
These... It's gonna freak them out.
I mean, they only have had to wait 1,000 years, so...
These... Steam...
engine.
Civilization just isn't ready. So they don't give the steam engine to Babylon. But later something disastrous happens, both in the movie and in the Akalu story. Despite holding back the steam engine until later, the technology they taught humans still gets used in a way they didn't intend. A scene shows Fastos in 1945 staring at the damage done by a nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima during World War II. Fastos is in tears as he tells Ajax that the Hiroshima bombing was his fault.
I did this. If my technology hadn't helped them advance, they're not worth saving.
The Akalu were also said to have
They're not worth saving.
The Akalu were also said to have dangerous knowledge that had the potential to cause us to destroy ourselves. And like this scene from the Eternals, something terrible would happen that would cause public opinion to turn on the Akalu. They go from being seen as heroes to being seen as evil and villainous. So what in the world caused perception?
My last fucking game.
Well, it wasn't the atom bomb. It was the flood. It's almost as if somebody hit the reset button on the human race. Coincidence? What I'm about to tell you suggests otherwise. There's actually a gap in the Akalu story around this time. But if we line up a couple other stories here, it'll unlock something incredible. On the left we have the Akalu story. The 7 stages are teaching humans, but there's a gap in that we don't know exactly what the Akalu did wrong.
God damn it.
The flood resets the human race, and the Akalu are imprisoned. So let's compare the biblical flood story, starting in Genesis 6. Here, angels are tampering with humans. There's giants. Humans have become excessively violent. The flood again resets the human race. And then, angels responsible are imprisoned. So what's new here? Well, whatever the spiritual beings did made humans violent and evil. Now get ready for a serious eye-opener. Look at the comparison to the Book of Enoch. Angels teach humans forbidden knowledge. Humans become violent and corrupt. The flood hits the reset button, the angels responsible are imprisoned. Isn't it interesting that in Enoch, the evil angels taught us the exact same dangerous knowledge as the Akalu? But all 3 of these stories have something in common. Spiritual beings caused the flood. They guided us in the direction that accelerated our own self-destructive tendencies. and it almost caused our extinction. If you think about it, the flood kind of bailed us out. It allowed the human race to continue. But the spirits who taught us all that dangerous stuff, I mean, they're locked away in prison somewhere, right? No more threat? Not so fast. Danger is still looming. Something very disturbing happened that caused the author of Genesis to pick up the pen and write Genesis 6:1-4. The knowledge that corrupted us before the flood, it didn't stay dead. It was coming back. And Babylon claimed to have had it. In their mythology, the god Marduk restructured things, imprisoning the original 7 Apkallu and putting 4 new Apkallu in place called the Umanu.
God fucking
they were
damn
different.
it!
They weren't divine. They were just humans who wore fish clothes. They would be the new keepers of divine knowledge given to them by their gods. Babylon's scribes claimed to descend from these Apkallu. The biblical authors would already be on high alert. It's like Babylon forgot what caused the flood in the first place. And here they were doing the exact same thing that almost got us all killed, looking for knowledge from the other side.
God fucking damn it.
So the writer of Genesis 6 is thinking, do you guys want to die? Do you want to see another flood? I mean, I know God said he wouldn't send another flood again, but I mean, fire is still an option, or an ice age. Or maybe like a 10,000 mile wide lightning bolt? But the biggest threat was that 4th Apkallu. An ice age? Or maybe like a 10,000 mile wide lightning bolt? But the biggest threat was that 4th Apkallu. There was something really odd about her. According to Dr. Michael Heiser's book Reversing Herman, the 4th Apkallu was said to be 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. So here's a shocker. How could a person be part human and part divine? Well, at some point, the original Apkallu would have had to mate with a human. That dangerous knowledge from before the flood, it was said to have survived through the 4th Apkallu. Great, right? The existential threat returned. And here's Babylon walking right into the trap. Maybe you're putting the pieces together now. Why is Genesis 6:1-4 talking about angels mating with humans and giants?
Come on, you fucking
The writer of the Bible is firing a shot right at Babylon, saying, hey, did you forget what caused the flood? These spirits you call Apkallu, well, they're kind of like fallen angels, and they're not your friend. Stay away from them. But why then does he go on to mention the Nephilim? Dr. Michael Heiser makes another mind-blowing connection in Reversing Herman. One other character from ancient stories was mentioned as being 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. And the crazy thing is, you probably already know what his name is. It was Gilgamesh, the ancient king. And here's another shot. Scholar Amar Anus spells out the threat in his paper. He wrote, Gilgamesh was remotely related to antediluvian Apkallu, as he brought back a message from the antediluvian age. That just means that he carried a message from before the flood. In Jewish terms, he was like one of the giant Nephilim, as exactly the Book of Giants depicts him. There is new supporting cuneiform evidence that Gilgamesh was thought of as having a gigantic stature, his height being 11 cubits. There you go. Gilgamesh was said to be taller than the biblical giant Goliath. Historically, Gilgamesh had something else in common with the giants called Nephilim too, an excessive taste for blood and violence. There are some pretty stunning parallels between these stories. Genesis 6:4 specifically tells us that there were giants on the earth before and after the flood, and Gilgamesh could fit right into that category. So what's all this mean? Honestly, I don't know what to make of some of the parallels, so you let me know what you think in the comments. But I do know this. Genesis 6:1-4 was written to warn everyone. Don't forget what caused the flood. making contact with spiritual beings other than God. We seem to be really bad at discerning whether or not spiritual beings are here to help us or hurt us. So, it's best not to seek them out. This passage is your standard warning against worshiping other gods, angels, or even raising a king to godlike status, like Gilgamesh. Stuff like this led directly to the flood. While the writer of Genesis is speaking to people familiar with the Apkallu story, he would not have endorsed it. This is a critique. He would agree on these three things, though. Spiritual beings corrupted us before the flood. The threat of the giants and the imprisonment of the angels responsible. But beyond that, it's somewhat of a mystery. Personally, I don't know what to think of the Apkallu. Were there real spirits behind them? I don't know. Were there rebel angels behind them? Maybe. All I know is there's a warning in Genesis 6, and I'm cautious to take too much else from the Apkallu story. One thing we know for sure is Babylon was playing with fire. But what about that other version of the story from the Book of Enoch? Do you want to know about the 200 angels who made a pact to destroy us all? Watch this video next.
I'm besotted the fuck out of me. Now fucking move that king right here. God damn it. God fucking damn it. I wanted to get back to my other fucking game. Take me back to my other goddamn game. Goddamn fucking son of a bitch. Yeah, that's what I fucking wanted. Come on, you fucking son of a bitch. That's what I fucking wanted. Come on, you
This is Red Pen Logic with Mr. B, where we help you assess bad thinking by using good thinking.
Wait a minute. Strike that. Reverse it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Last week, we looked at Mike Winger bumbling and fumbling through his attempt and failure to address 10 atheist challenges to Christianity. But at the top of that video, Mike cites Tim Barnett as the person who passed the challenge on to him from a commenter on Tim's channel, complete with a link to Tim's own response to those 10 atheist challenges. And I figured while my non-believer hackles were already up and primed to showcase how apologists can't even be bothered to properly address criticism of their worldview, I might as well cast my ire onto Tim as well as onto Mike. So we're going to see if Tim can do any better himself, or if he will fail as spectacularly as Mike Winger did. Not that these particular challenges are the top tier of atheistic challenges to the Christian conception of God. They only came by way of a YouTube comment section after all. But if supposed professional apologists can't get their shit together enough to sufficiently respond to a handful of off-the-cuff challenges to the religious beliefs and theistic view that they've spent the majority of their life and careers thinking about and defending, then they're going to fall to rhetorical pieces when they butt heads against real, robust, and well-argued philosophical criticisms of their worldview. And, as an aside, they have done that. They've failed spectacularly where the more challenging atheistic criticisms come up. But maybe Tim just wanted something he thought would be a little easier to talk about and a bit more of laid-back apologetics this time around. Which will make it all the funnier when he invariably falls on his face in the wake of even the slightest pushback against his worldview. So let's dive in and get into Tim Barnett's faceplant in attempting to respond to Tim Atheist challenges. But before we get to that, if you end up liking what you see in this video and would like to help out the channel, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. Check out my social media, including my Patreon, Twitter, and Blue Sky, all linked in the description. And of course, like this video, pop in a comment. All that goes a long way towards pleasing the YouTube algorithm, advancing valuable advantages, validating a vivid, verifiable view, while vilifying divine evangelical verdicts and vindicating victims of their veneration. May keep my channel motoring along. Now on to today's video.
Today's challenge comes courtesy of Brian Doyle. He offers 10 ways to prove that God doesn't exist. Let's see what he's got. Video guy? Please put 3 minutes on the clock, and let's include a fallacy counter, just because.
Oh, I think I heard my mating call.
Oh ho ho! A fallacy counter. Now you're speaking my language, Tim. My specific stock in trade is as a professor of communication studies and journalism, two areas that are heavily focused on rhetoric and proper argumentation. Fallacies are kind of my bread and butter. I spend entire sections of the semester teaching my students about how to properly spot fallacies and avoid them in crafting their arguments. And it's always a fun time for me when apologists tee up a focus on fallacies, because they never identify them properly and never seem to notice their own reliance on fallacies in their own arguments. So don't say that word unless you want me to shine a spotlight on how you're doing it wrong.
Proof number 1. The fact that a human being has to tell you about the existence of your God proves there's no God. We would be born with knowledge of its existence. The first proof offers the first fallacy. It's called a non sequitur. The conclusion just doesn't follow. Human beings have to tell us about the existence of all kinds of things, but that doesn't prove that those things don't exist. For example, teachers tell terrified students about fractions, but that doesn't prove there's no fractions.
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
This isn't a non sequitur, Tim. It might be in any other context, such as the one you offered. A teacher having to tell students about fractions doesn't mean that there aren't actually fractions. But we aren't talking about math here. We're talking about religion. And math and religion are radically different, such that you can't use a math analogy to talk about belief in God. That would be a weak analogy fallacy, which is when an analogy is used to prove or disprove an argument, but the analogy is too dissimilar to be effective. That is, it's unlike the argument more than it's like the argument. See, Tim, while it's true that most things have to be taught to children for them to gain an understanding of it, such as math, science, animals, biology, physics, or the very environment around us, that isn't what is taught about the idea of God, particularly within Christianity. It is asserted to us atheists over and over and over again by apologists like yourself that humans are born with an innate knowledge of God within us right from the start.
God knew us before we were created.
Yeah.
And we knew Him. We're born with knowledge of God in our heart.
With Hoosie, Emily.
Of God within us right from the start.
God knew us before we were created.
Hoosie,
Emily. And we knew Him. We're born with knowledge of God in our heart.
An internal witness. Now, this is the idea that deep down inside of every single human being, there is this deep internal sense that there must be a God who exists.
Even your own holy book speaks to the supposed innate knowledge that God has made clear to every single person who has ever lived. In Romans 1:18 it states, "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God, nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened." So you can't sit there and claim that since kids need to go to school to learn all sorts of things, that means that the same holds true for the knowledge of God. This challenge is poking at the very Christian notion that everyone is supposedly born with innate knowledge of God's existence. But if that were true, then not only should everyone believe in God right from the start and not need to be indoctrinated into that belief at a young age, but everyone would also have the same understanding of that God that they all deep down already believe in, and therefore everyone should be a Christian. Which then leads into the next challenge.
Proof number 2. A God belief is simple geography. Being raised in a Christian home decides which God you believe in. This is a textbook example of the genetic fallacy. You cannot invalidate a belief by showing how someone came to hold that belief. So this proof is about God belief, not about whether or not God exists.
Wrong! That's wrong!
That was not a genetic fallacy. And claiming that it is exactly what Mike Winger did in his video. Now, I'm not sure who copied off of whose homework here, but obviously one of you did. And rather than just reiterate what I said to Mike, I'd like to use this as a warning against echo chambers. Just quickly, it's not a genetic fallacy because it isn't saying that the belief is wrong because of where it comes from. It's just pointing out that most religious belief comes by way of childhood indoctrination by family, culture, or the wider society that one is raised within, and that is not a good reason to hold any particular belief. Now, back to you and Mike having the same wrong argument for this challenge. This is what happens when you surround yourself with only people holding to the same ideological positions as yourself and rarely conferring with people outside of that bubble. You end up adopting the same flawed reasoning and bad arguments. Because you agree with the other person's worldview, so you're primed to want to agree with them in other areas as well. So when your buddy from the same religion makes a bad argument, you want them to be right so much that you look right past the obvious flaws in their reasoning, like you did here with this genetic fallacy claim, and you end up adopting it into your own reasoning, thereby not only strengthening your faulty position based on flawed reasoning in your own mind, but then causing you to go around spouting it over and over again to other people, also within your bubble, and also primed to want to agree with you and accept the things that you are saying. Then they adopt the flawed argument into their own rhetoric, and on it spreads farther and farther within the echo chamber until it bumps up against someone from outside of the bubble, who then points out where you're going wrong. But by then, you're so attached to the argument and so blind to its flaws that it becomes the sunk cost fallacy. Reasoning that further investment is warranted on the fact that the resources already invested will be lost otherwise, not taking into consideration the overall losses involved in further investment. This results in just assuming that the dissenter, the person arguing against you, is a hater or a naysayer who just wants you to be wrong at all costs and can't see the truth in your argument because they've darkened their hearts and suppressed the truth in their unrighteousness. So, yeah, in short, don't just copy the claims of other like-minded people without thinking through their positions for yourself. It'll keep you from propagating bad arguments. Like this one, Tim.
Proof number 3. There was no time before the Big Bang, so that means that there was no time for God to exist in or create things in. This challenge mistakenly assumes that God is necessarily a temporal being, that he must exist and act in time. But Christians have traditionally held that God is a timeless being, outside of time prior to creation. So there's no proof here. just a straw man fallacy.
That's not right.
That's not a straw man, Tim. Are you just desperately searching for fallacies in each of these 10 challenges, or do you seriously not know how a straw man works? Which would be weird considering that it's about the easiest fallacy to spot and the one that most people are really familiar with. But a straw man takes place when an opponent deliberately substitutes a person's actual position or argument with a distorted, exaggerated, or misrepresented version of the position or argument. Nowhere in this challenge is the OP asserting that Christianity claims something that it doesn't claim, and then arguing against that incorrect claim.
Goddamn son of a bitch.
It isn't that the OP is claiming that Christians say God exists in time. Of course Christians regularly claim that God exists outside of time. That isn't in dispute. What is in dispute is the idea of being outside of time even being a coherent concept to begin with. Arguing that God exists outside of time and yet has the ability to make decisions, take actions, or enact causes that have effects, which are all things that absolutely require time in order to take place, is a nonsensical claim. This challenge doesn't strawman your position, it just makes the point that your Christian position of God existing outside of time is ridiculous. It also tends to go along with the common Christian claim that God exists outside of space as well as time, or that God exists outside of the entire universe, or outside of the cosmos, however it gets framed. Basically, if we think of the cosmos as all of space and time, the Christian idea is that God exists outside of it, outside of all of space and time. Which is the same as saying that God exists nowhere and for no time.
God fucking.
Which is basically the same thing as saying that God doesn't exist at all.
God the fucking holy
Proof number 4. The Abrahamic God cannot exist because it wasn't the first God to be created. There are other gods that have been proclaimed to exist before this God. They can't all be true, so if we can deny the existence of one of these gods, we can use the same method to deny them all. If this is a good argument against God, then it's also a good argument against science, since older false concepts are often replaced by newer true concepts.
God fucking damn it.
Oh, well then if that's your argument, then any religion that is younger than Christianity should take precedence. And Islam is younger than Christianity, so Christianity should be rightfully replaced with Islam, correct? I mean, as an atheist, I'm certainly not advocating for Islam here. I'm just taking your own dipshit logic to its inevitable conclusion.
On Doyle's logic, since the older geocentric view is false, we can just deny the newer heliocentric view by the same method. Of course, this is silly. We should weigh the evidence for each theory and for each God.
Now, I'm not going to defend this particular challenge too much. I feel it was about the weakest one out of all the 10, but if I were trying to steelman it, it would be that many a Christian are quick to use the 2,000-year-plus nature of Christianity and its prevalence during all that time as a justification in and of itself for the validity of the faith.
Fucking Christ.
Arguing that if Christianity were false, shouldn't it have been disproven by now? But if that line of thinking is valid, then it would stand to reason that older faiths that remain in abundance, such as Hinduism, which predates Christianity by a couple thousand years, would have even more validity than younger faiths that haven't stood as much of the test of time. But then you said we should weigh the evidence for each theory and for each God. And I couldn't agree with you more on that one, Tim. That is the absolute number one reason with a frickin' bullet that I'm an atheist. Because there is no good evidence for any God, and ample reason not to believe in the Christian concept of God especially. I'd go into that more and give examples of that, but since you just stated that we should weigh the evidence for each God and then didn't bother to give any of the evidence for your concept of God, I don't really feel I need to dwell on the variety of reasons to reject your concept of God either. I mean, there's other fallacious fish to fry here.
Another non sequitur on the board.
Excuse me, fuck.
What the fuck did you just say?
That wasn't a non sequitur.
Jesus fucking
I mean, it was inarticulately stated, but the conclusion follows from the premise there. There have been lots of gods proposed throughout history, and they can't all be true, given the general mutually exclusive nature of all the various god concepts. So whatever reasoning you can use to deny the existence of Allah, or Brahma, or Elohim, or Vishnu, can similarly be used to deny the existence of Yahweh. Now, certainly, wildly different god concepts may require different arguments and approaches to invalidate them. I mean, I wouldn't say that you could use the same reasoning to reject Loki as you could to reject Yahweh, one being a limited god as part of a larger pantheon, and the other being thought of as a singularly all-powerful supreme being. But other singularly all-powerful supreme being god concepts that you reject, such as Allah, who is even ostensibly the same Abrahamic God that you believe in, just with a different name and different religious conception, well, you can use the same reasoning to reject your God concept as you use for theirs.
Proof number 5. God either allows the devil to exist and is an accomplice, or it isn't an all-powerful God. An all-powerful and all-loving God wouldn't allow the devil to exist. Isaiah 45:7, KJV. Doyle sets up a false dilemma. It's not an either-or. There's another option. God is all-powerful and all-loving, and God allows the devil to exist because he has good reason to do so. Which is why philosophically trained atheists have largely abandoned this proof. Fallacy, false dilemma.
Sorry, that's just wrong.
That isn't a false dilemma fallacy, Tim. And you were close. I mean, you got right what a false dilemma fallacy is. It's when a restricted number of choices are presented when there could potentially be more. That is correct.
You didn't count me.
But that's not what it's playing here. This isn't a false dilemma. This is a true dilemma. This literally is the problem of evil challenge, and it is a challenge that has never sufficiently been addressed by apologists. There is no argument for a supposed all-loving, all-powerful, and all-knowing God permitting the rampant suffering and evil that takes place in the world. And no good, rational reasoning has ever been presented to contradict that. All apologists like you ever do is just hand-wave the problem of evil away with the dismissive, "Oh, God has sufficient reasons for permitting evil." Oh, really? Well, what are they? "Oh, well, we're just mere mortal, limited beings. We can't possibly fathom God's mind and his reasoning, but trust me, bro, he totally has good reasons for it." No, I don't have to substantiate that claim. You just need to trust me. No, Tim, I don't. If God is all-powerful, then he has the ability to affect any outcome he wants with no unintended consequences and no side effects in doing so. And if God is all-loving, he would want to eliminate all suffering from his supposed most favored creation. And if he were all-knowing, he would know exactly what is necessary to make that happen. Thus, there can be no justification for the suffering that exists. What, it's only through suffering that we can grow and better ourselves? The whole good Lord gave us mountains so we could learn how to climb shtick? Well, an all-powerful God would have the ability to create humans in such a way that we were already fully grown and fully developed, and the best versions of ourselves right from the start. Or otherwise stated, he could have created us knowing how to climb without needing to put mountains in our way. What, he gave us free will, and some people use that free will to make others suffer, thus God has to allow suffering to exist? Well, he could have made us incapable of choosing to do evil without invalidating our free will. Just as me not being able to choose to fly because I lack the ability to fly doesn't invalidate my free will. So that argument doesn't track. What, God made suffering because there will be some nebulous, undefined, greater outcome as a result of that suffering existing? Well, an all-powerful God could have affected that best possible outcome without needing the suffering to exist in order to get to it. There is simply no justification that can be made to the existence of suffering if you are truly positing an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good God. If God has the power to end all suffering, and the desire to end all suffering, and doesn't do it, then he must not know how to do it effectively and is thus not all-knowing. If God knows how to end all suffering and has the desire to end all suffering and doesn't do it, then he must not have the power and is thus not all powerful. And if God has the power to end all suffering and the knowledge of how to end all suffering and doesn't do it, then he must not want to and is thus not all loving. You claiming that this is a false dilemma just because you don't like the dilemma that's being presented doesn't make it a fallacy.
Proof number 6. The God of the Bible is jealous of other gods. This proves that this God is not the only God.
Man, not fuck his butt or what? I fucked his butt. Did I fuck that? I fucked his butt.
Atheists have a lot of arguments.
Right, you little snots. I have received countless requests to cover this video, and you know me. If anyone asks me to do something, I'm like, nah. That's why I never wash, I don't vote, and all those people in my basement starve to death. But finally, after the again countless people have covered it in their own, largely serious ways, it's my turn. And I am going to absolutely fucking ruin this guy's video. Mostly by not taking it seriously, unless I want to. Because I don't even do what I tell me to do. I will try to make it snappy and see if I can answer them all before the heat death of the universe. Because I don't want one of these 40-minute plus monstrosities. Enjoy!
But they never really think of anything new that the church hasn't had answers to for the past 2,000 years.
Funny that, because theists have a lot of arguments, but they never seem to have anything new that people with brains haven't had answers to for exactly as long. It's almost like a lot of the arguments are really, really bad.
So let's answer them. Religion causes wars. Well, actually, only 7% of all human wars were caused by religion, and if you remove Islamic wars, that number drops down to 3%.
Way to prove the argument right. Religion causes wars, and your response is yes. Cool. And assuming the numbers are even true, therefore God, right? No, wait. And why wouldn't you count Islam? That's just fucking weird. No one said your religion causes all wars. Strange response. Right off the bat. Bad start.
A lot of evil has been done in the name of religion. This is true, but the most murderous people in human history have been atheists. This doesn't mean religion is true, it just means you can't use that as an argument against it.
Arguably, there are far more evil things you can do than murder. Sure, death takes away life, but torture has been done on massive scales by many religious organisations over the years, and you would think that if God was in charge of any of them, he might have told them to, stop. Also, I enjoy the little thing put in the corner there. That is not what turns up when you search Hitler religion, and the fact that you did put that there proves that you are objectively a lying little shit. So, everything is fair game now.
If you were born somewhere else, you wouldn't be a Christian. Okay, and if you were born somewhere else, you wouldn't be an atheist. Everyone's beliefs are shaped by their context.
Did you seriously just know you? The point isn't that beliefs are shaped by context. The point is, if your religion is the right one, you wouldn't have been born into it if you were born somewhere else. So I guess we need to add idiot.
Don't even think about it, fucking slut.
How do you know which religion is true? Well, everyone, religious or not, has faith in a certain worldview. It's just that some worldviews are called religions and some are secular. But everyone has to ask the question of which worldview best explains the world.
That wasn't an answer. Your answer is actually, I don't know, which is a fine answer if someone comes out of nowhere to ask you this, but you chose to show it, and explaining how believing things works is not a good response to how do you know you are right, because you obviously don't.
There's no scientific proof that God exists. Well, by definition, science can only prove things inside the natural world, and by definition, God is something outside the natural world. So science can neither prove nor disprove God.
So this one is just you agreeing to that point, but also missing that so many fucking theists say that they can absolutely prove God with science. Are you answering for them as well? Because I don't think that they would be super happy with that response.
There's no evidence of anything supernatural. Well, that's just not accurate. There are medically documented cases of people with demonic possession speaking in languages they don't know, for example, and people with near-death experiences getting information they never had access to.
I would say that question is not being presented in its best form. There's no good evidence for the supernatural. That cannot be better explained by natural causes. Because,
the Bible has contradictions. Okay, you think you found an apparent contradiction that the church hasn't known about for 2,000 years? Every apparent contradiction can be explained by understanding just a little bit of theology.
Just because you have explanations for those contradictions that you are happy with doesn't mean that I or anyone like me thinks that they are good enough. And that's mostly because they aren't.
The Gospels were anonymous. Okay, anonymous doesn't mean we have no idea who wrote them. It just means the names of the authors aren't signed in the text itself. But we literally have writings from church fathers who knew the apostles and can verify that they indeed wrote the books named after them.
I mean, personally, they could have been signed totally by God TM, and that wouldn't change the fact that their contents and the things they are trying to support would be something I could or would hold as true. So even if what you said is true, who gives a shit?
The Gospels misquote Jesus. Now, it's true that a lot of secular scholars think the Gospels are a mix of real quotes from the historical Jesus and fake quotes added by the church, but none of them can agree on which quotes are legit and which are not, so we can discard their opinions.
I mean, the fact that they all seem to suspect something is amiss demonstrates that there's probably something amiss, which is far more important than whether or not they can agree which part exactly is bollocks. And they, of course, can't all agree which ones are the real. But you, of course, missed that shit like it was a speeding jizz aisle. Although, if I were a betting bastard, the fake ones would be all of them.
Jesus never claimed to be God. Yes, he did. He didn't say, I am God, worship me, but he showed that he was God in many places in all four Gospels by doing things that only God can do. It's true that he didn't walk around before his resurrection claiming to be God, because he wanted people to figure it out themselves. That's why he kept saying, who do you say that I am? However, after his resurrection, people figured out that he was God, and Jesus congratulated them.
You just agreed to the point again. Like, your response is mostly whatever, but it really should have started. Jesus didn't claim to be God. No, he didn't. But here's these other things I think show that he was. Whether or not any of that is accurate. This is just more of a problem with your poor grasp of language. Put it on the list.
The later one of the Gospels was written, the more divine it makes Jesus seem, so we can extrapolate that Jesus was originally a human figure who got made more divine over time. Alright, maybe some Gospels emphasize Jesus' divinity more than others, but what about Paul's letters that fully confess the divinity of Jesus, and were also written before any of the Gospels? So that breaks your pattern.
I mean, if the letters are letters, and the Gospels are Gospels, then the pattern is still very much there, and I assume that they are different things because they are, different. So a direct comparison doesn't seem to make that much sense, regardless of the timeline.
The Bible supports slavery. No, it doesn't. Just because there's slavery in the Bible doesn't mean the Bible supports it. There are some Old Testament verses that could be interpreted as condoning slavery, but Jesus himself said that the Old Testament made accommodations to people's sinful state. And also, slave owners in the American South had slave Bibles for their slaves to read, but it omitted a lot of the real Bible, so if the Bible actually did support slavery, this wouldn't have been necessary.
That's just wrong. First off, the Bible absolutely and consistently explains the rules and the hows of acquiring and keeping slaves. If I wrote a book called How to Rob Banks and then claimed I wasn't supporting grand larceny because grand larceny is bad, you would think I was an idiot. Also, I can only assume that slave Bibles mostly contain shit about submitting to masters, and I can't imagine that having shit about slavery in there would have been much of a problem, since it's so obviously can condone slavery, you goof.
Christianity supports slavery. Well, sure, some Christians did, but all human civilizations have had slavery, Christian civilization was the first one to abolish it on moral grounds. The fact that you're against slavery is due to Christian influence. Also, most organizations fighting modern-day slavery are Christian.
Damn it!
Let's say that's 100% true and not missing out on, thousands of years of human progress that got people to the position where they started to think, hold on, owning people is a bit fucked. It's weird that the thing God definitely wanted all along took you so freaking long to get to, when it was always his opinion, and he's an all-power boy who could literally have turned slavery off at any point he wanted. But did God good job?
God killed tons of people in the Bible. Well, it's actually way more than that. God numbers everyone's days. He's the giver of life, so he can take it, especially if people sin.
This is starting to feel like fucking improv, because I'm pretty sure you just yes-anded me. For fuck's sake. If I point out God killing people is bad, and your only response is, well, he kills everyone when you think about it, that's only worse for your case, not better.
Atheist countries are more prosperous. Yes, it's true that Northern European countries are very prosperous and very secular, but correlation doesn't equal causation. It's not like atheism causes prosperity, it's that prosperity causes atheism, because when people have comfortable lives, they don't feel a need to depend on God. But why are these particular countries so prosperous in the first place? They may be secular now, but they're rooted in generations and generations of Protestant Christianity. If you want an example of a country that's atheist and not rooted in Christianity, look at communist China.
Hey, correlation doesn't equal causation, except when I say it does. Okay, I don't think there's much more I need to say when you are so hypocritical with your application of fallacies on the list.
There's 4,000 gods that people believe in, and you're atheists of 3,999 of them. I just go one god further. Okay, this isn't the gotcha that you think it is, because the question of whether some sort of God exists is fundamentally different from the question of which religion is right about God.
No, you dumb asshole, we know that. We are just pointing out that if you think you are right about which God, you have 4,000 other ideas of him to contend with. But if you think you're right about no God, well, I don't have to contend with shit.
If God created everything, then who created God? Well, God is defined as the uncaused causer. Everyone knows there needs to be a first cause at the beginning of the chain of all events in the universe, and it makes a lot more sense for that first cause to be a personal God who caused things for a reason, rather than some random impersonal force.
Everyone, what are you talking about? And that it makes sense for it to be some asshole who really specifically is into you is actually the opposite of the more likely when it comes to something that just kinda does the universe. I mean, that would explain everything so much better than someone who actually gives a shit.
Science disproves God. Well, actually, the Church invented modern science. All the founders of the scientific revolution deeply believed in God, and medieval theologians laid the groundwork for modern science by saying the world was governed by an intelligent creator. That means we can understand the world with our intelligence, and studying God led to studying the world because the world is God's creation.
And yet today, atheism is overrepresented in science. It's almost like in the stupid ages where even science boys were dumb and thought that God did a real, because damn it, everybody did, that it kind of didn't matter what you did. But once we got away from that, it all seemed to change.
God is just used to fill in the gaps of things that science can't explain yet. Well, actually, God is the reason for everything, even things that science can't explain. It's not one or the other. It's not like everything is explained by either science or God, and the more science can explain, the less God can explain. Really, science can explain almost everything, but God is still behind it all, because science explains the how, and God explains the why.
You really missed the forest for the trees with that one, didn't you? For starters, your why hypothesis is barely an answer. That's just what you think, and you are stating it as a fact. And second, so many things were explained for the longest time as God must have did it, and then slowly but surely that has been demonstrated to be a faulty hypothesis. As our explanations grow, God becomes less and less necessary. That is the point. Even with your nonsense here, he has become less necessary.
If God is good, why can't he destroy all evil? Well, he eventually will.
Eventually, it's just not good enough. Because why the fuck did he let it in the first place?
Why can't he do it now? Because he'd have to destroy you.
He could fucking try.
Why does God let any bad things happen? Because we deserve it.
You hear that, newborn babies who don't even have the faculties to even comprehend what is happening to them, let alone make any choices in the matter? You fucking deserve any and all bad things. Dude, you sound psychotic. And here's an argument. Religion makes people say horrendously evil shit without even trying. I'm jealous. I try so hard to be evil, and you've got it over me in spades.
Well, animals don't sin, so why do they suffer? Well, the Bible says all things will be restored, so if God is good, we can assume they will be compensated.
Well, that's simply not good enough, seeing as no amount of compensation for any amount of suffering ever fixes the fact that you suffered. I mean, if you destroyed my arm, there is no amount of money that will ever bring my arm back. That happened. It will always have happened, and even if you replace it with a sick Gatling gun, I would still prefer my actual arm, although if it shot whiskey bullets...
How do you know that God isn't evil instead? Well, because evil is not a thing the way good is. Just like cold is just a lack of heat, and dark is just a lack of light, evil is just a lack of good. And for good to be objective, it needs to come from God. So a God who is objectively evil is logically impossible.
Just like how an apologist who makes good points is impossible, as demonstrated by this video. I see. Also, this absence of good shit makes no sense. I mean, this box is empty, and this box is full of dead humans. Which one is more evil? The empty one, obviously. You gotta fill them all, man.
Can God make a rock he can't lift? Well, you're just asking if God can contradict himself, like can God lie, or can God change, or can God make another God? And the answer to all those things is no. God being all-powerful means he can do anything to things outside himself. It doesn't mean that he can do anything to himself, or that he can contradict himself.
All-powerful. Do you know what that word all means? It doesn't mean most of. It doesn't mean everything but. It means all. All the powers is to have all the powers, whether that be to himself or not. If he can't do shit to himself, he's not all-powerful. But that is mostly because all power is a faulty premise that makes no sense if you analyze it for even a moment.
Why did God let evil exist at all? So he could be glorified in defeating it. Triumph over evil is a greater good than evil having just never existed.
That is utter bullshit. If I allow someone to punch some children so I can go and attack them or have them arrested or whatever thing I find to be the quote-unquote solution to that situation, A, the kids will still have been harmed, and like I said, that shit just doesn't go away. And B, the fact that I could possibly have stopped it and didn't makes me a fucking asshole. Although your proposition is actually even worse, because God effectively had to make it so that evil could even exist. It would be more like I paid some people to punch the bunch of kids so that I could then show up and prove what a great guy I am. That is just so much fucking worse, it's not even funny. You know, aside from all the kids getting punched.
Religion is just wishful thinking. Well, if that were true, then the Bible wouldn't be all about how much we all suck.
It can be both, especially if you want to neg someone into doing whatever it is you want. You call them names, you make them feel like shit, and then you say, don't worry, infinite forever mansions or some wild shit will never happen. Frankly, the real problem is the Bible is kind of abusive, mostly to those who believe it.
Psychology explains why you believe in God. So what? If God is real, we should expect there to be some psychological or social benefit to believing in him.
Okay, but the opposite is also true. If there is no God, the only explanation to people like you being so fucking sure is that your brain is stupid, and we can explain why it's stupid like that.
Spiritual experiences can be explained by brain chemicals. Well, romantic experiences can also be explained by brain chemicals, but that doesn't mean your life isn't real. So spiritual experiences being explained by brain chemicals doesn't mean that God isn't real.
And that dragon that fucked your dad in that dream you had can be explained by the same chemical processes. It doesn't mean that the great the dad fucker is real. It just means that experiences based on brain chemistry are not to be trusted to give us reliable data. That's why we use science instead of, well, the other day I felt weird, so it must be ghosts.
Well, drug trips show that spiritual experiences are from the brain. Well, people who have had both drug trips and near-death experiences say that they're completely different categories of feeling.
Oh, some people have said that, have they? Sounds like a real in-depth scientific experiment you are referencing here. Also, some guys I know said they met God and he told them that he didn't exist, so checkmate, fuckwit.
The story of Jesus was copied from the story of Horus or some other ancient character. Okay, dude, that's a Reddit atheist level myth. Even atheist scholars know that that's silly.
I mean, even if it's completely 100% original do not steal, that doesn't mean that it's true.
Faith is the opposite of logic and reason. No, it's not. Faith just means trust. Anytime you eat food, you're having faith that it's not poisoned, even if you can't scientifically prove it. If you're married, you have faith that your wife loves you, even if you can't scientifically prove that. And if you tried to scientifically prove it, she'd probably get very mad at you because it would mean you didn't trust her.
You could definitely scientifically prove if your food has been poisoned. What the fuck are you talking about? And there's more to love in a relationship than just faith. You know your spouse loves you through actions. If they said they loved you and then constantly cheated on you, treated you like shit, poisoned your food, you would pretty much know, regardless of faith, that they probably weren't that into you.
Evolution proves God didn't create the world. Well, not necessarily. God often works through natural processes in the Bible, and for all of church history there have been prominent Christian theologians who have had a more metaphorical interpretation of Genesis, even well over 1,000 years before Darwin existed.
You do not know what evolution is if you think that it has anything to do with the origins of the fucking planet. Scientific illiteracy on the list. What a surprise.
Christianity only spread because of military conquest. Well, eventually they did do military conquest, but for the first 300 years of Christianity it was illegal, and it took over the Roman Empire despite that because of how popular it became.
Let's say that is true. Argument ad populi does not mean something is true or good or whatever. I mean, Sir Sick is kind of popular, and his videos are all objectively shit. Wait.
Constantine invented what we now know of as Christianity. Again, Reddit atheist level myth. Atheists can do better than that. Listen to an actual scholar.
I'm glad that you admit that atheists can do better. I just wish I had the same faith for theists.
If Christianity is true, why are there so many denominations of it? Well, yeah, there are a lot of denominations, but the things they agree on are a lot more significant than the things they disagree on.
It doesn't matter if the things they agree or disagree on are significant to each other. It matters if God thinks they are significant, because if he really cares about shellfish, but actually never really minded if anyone prayed to him or not, a lot of y'all are super fucked.
There's no evidence for Jesus outside the Bible. Well, that's not true. There's the ancient Jewish historian Josephus who wrote about Jesus, and he's one of the reasons why even secular scholars know Jesus historically existed.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure a Jewish fella probably didn't think that he was the actual Son of God, because that's kind of an important thing to them. So even if it's accurate that people talked about someone called Jesus outside of the Bible, at least in this case, they probably didn't mean Jesus.
You really think God made billions of galaxies with billions of stars in each of them just to have a personal relationship with you? Yes.
Well, good for you, that doesn't make any sense, and makes you sound like an egotistical maniac. But no, that's it. Stop being so ridiculous, please. Also, I enjoy the implication from this picture in that you having done a piss-poor job of answering atheists. I mean, many of these weren't even arguments, they were just points to make you think that we would suddenly turn to Jesus. And I will! Hey mate, why did you make this guy so fucking dumb? Alright. Of course, because of the funny. Fair play.
Wait, before you go, I have something super important to tell you. It's life or death. It will change everything forever. No, wait, it's gone. Oh well, probably wasn't important. But while I have you, don't forget to comment, subscribe, and notify. And if you want more of my smexy voice, check out Mrs. Six's channel, Spoon Stuff Stories, where I narrate and voice all the videos, and she does the work. And if you want to support the channel, check out the merch store for cool t-shirts, or check out Patreon, memberships, and PayPal to support directly. Finally, follow me on the medias of social to get completely pointless stuff and to keep up on the latest releases. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to tell you. Whatever you do, don't touch the...
You stupid motherfucker. Stupid bucker. God damn it. God fucking damn it. God fuck it. God fuck it. God fucking damn it. God fuck 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 it.
Suffering and doesn't do it, then he must.
God fuck it. Come on, you fucking bitch. God.
How infuriating is it when goddos don't grasp simple concepts, like the very easy to understand idea that an atheist is just someone who doesn't believe the claims of gods. Joel Settercase is the president and founder of the Think Institute, a 501c3 non-profit for practical Christian leadership for men, and he doesn't even understand the basics of non-belief and gets a lot of stuff infuriatingly wrong. Hello, I'm the Skeptic, the British floating circle that watches people make extraordinary claims, and then I explain why I don't accept what they're saying. There's nothing worse than when Christians don't understand atheism and try to shift proof burdens out of their way and onto someone else. Joel Settercase should really know better, since his non-profit is designed for men in apologetics that have a biblical worldview. If you're going to have a non-profit, surely you need a proper understanding of what you're speaking out against, right? Unfortunately, Joel here gets it completely wrong. So, before getting annoyed with yet another theist who doesn't understand non-belief, if this isn't your first Skeptic video, hit the like, the subscribe and the bell, and maybe the algorithm will understand what videos to put in your feed. And a super thanks to those that hit super thanks in some recent videos. District Driver, Kevin, Mark Rothenbuehler, William Horton, and Jesus Was a Liberal. And a big thank you to channel members who get to use Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe and more hen emojis. Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe bestows Lisa upon you all. More hen. So Joel hosts a call-in show, I guess, and an atheist called them. This is their conversation.
Alright, so Rembrandt, you're an atheist.
Suck my dick.
Why are you an atheist?
I see no reason to. I see no evidence that the claim
I'm fixing to get myself a fucking whore.
I know Joel is talking to Rembrandt here, but I think I'll sometimes give my answer too, just in case it differs from the atheist. And here it does. I'd go further and say all God's religions,
damn it.
nothing convinces me.
Okay, so why do you start with atheism? Why not just... how did you arrive at atheism as a...
God fuck it.
As your position? How did you get there?
Holy fucking roast.
Atheism in this context is the rejection of religious claims. I see no evidence that the religious claims of Christianity are even coherent.
Already Joel doesn't understand that atheism is a rejection of the position, and you don't need evidence to not be convinced, just like you don't need an empty stamp collector's book to not be a stamp collector.
I see. Okay, so... would you say that it's fair to say that your adoption of atheism was sort of arbitrary? You weren't driven to it by evidence. You chose it because you wanted to choose it. Is that fair?
No, that's downright silly.
And it also sounds like Joel is trying to sound smug and intelligent here. You don't choose atheism. In my case, I'm unconvinced of the existence and claims suggesting that existence of the gods. And so the best label for my position is atheist. I didn't really know of the word until I was in my 20s.
Well, I agree. I think that would be silly. But how did you know you're
if I can get rid of some of these fucking
let me explain why I asked it. A lot of times atheists will assume that atheism is the default position. And then they'll demand evidence from the Christian.
Well, duh, because it's not atheism or Christianity is the only two options. It's not being convinced of God or gods, or a plethora of gods to choose from. Of course, it's up to the believer to prove their brand of God or sugar-free God exists. Why do Christians think it's their way or no way?
What a lot of atheists don't recognize, and I'm sure you do recognize this, or maybe you will after I
God
say it,
fucking
is that if your criteria for adopting a position, or especially one as important as, as atheism versus Christian theism, if your criterion is I need evidence, then you ought to have evidence for your position as well.
God,
it's infuriating. This guy runs a 501c3, teaching folks how to do this. If I was unconvinced of the existence of leprechauns, I wouldn't need to provide evidence for the non-existence of leprechauns. I am unconvinced of the existence of leprechauns.
Right? You ought to be able to defend your position based on the evidence, not to just say, oh, no, I adopted this, don't ask me how I got here, it's just neutral, it's just, because atheism is not a neutral position, it's a statement about God and whether or not he's revealed himself and
Jesus goddamn Christ
and truth, goodness, and beauty, and all sorts of things.
Incorrect. It's not being convinced. You don't adopt anything. In simple terms, my brain isn't convinced, so I'm not a theist. I'm the opposite of a believer. I'm not a believer. Like someone who is asymptomatic in that they have no symptoms, I'm an atheist. I have no God belief.
So how did
goddamn fucking goddamn Christ?
Atheism if I was not convinced that atheism is a neutral position?
You know, there are certain things in this world that we know are true, like anthropologists.
Jesus goddamn Christ!
Have written a lot of peer-reviewed, accepted literature on how gods are created. We know how gods are created. People write down stories which aren't accurate, portrayals of the events that occurred. We see this happens every day. What we don't see every day are miracles.
He was talking about atheism being a neutral position, and what evidence was there to support that? Again, infuriatingly, he's adding a need for proof when it's the lack of convincing proof from the other side that means that someone would label themselves atheist. I wouldn't tell Joel that the one true rainbow deity, Lisa the rainbow giraffe, leaping upon her was real, only for me to ask why he's a giraffist, and to provide evidence to support that to convince me that there isn't a rainbow giraffe, even though he should know that there is a rainbow giraffe, since I've made several banana split sacrifices now to the rainbow goddess, and asked in return that Lisa the rainbow giraffe leave me upon her, show herself to Joel. He's just hardened his heart to Lisa the rainbow giraffe. Leave me upon her.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, your evidence for atheism is that anthropologists say that people invent gods.
Jesus goddamn fucking Christ!
Exists, or what's? Help me out here. You read some peer-reviewed articles by some anthropologists saying that some people have invented gods. And what's the connection of that and your adoption of a position that the Christian God does not exist? Like, how is that evidence?
If you go to different Christian churches, you'll see people claiming that they've raised people from the dead.
Which would be a miracle?
Jesus goddamn Christ!
Which would be a miracle, but this never happened verifiably.
Which would then mean that Remy here is unconvinced and thus not a believer. But Joel seems desperate for something like, here is a talking donkey that told me God can't exist. And we all know how ridiculous talking donkeys are.
Okay. So, again, I'm looking for the evidence for atheism. So, is your evidence for atheism that people who are Christians claim to have raised the dead, but it's not verifiable?
And the ridiculous claims, and I feel that many of the claims in the Bible are quite ridiculous.
Okay, so your evidence for atheism is that you find these claims to be ridiculous. By what standard do you find it to be ridiculous?
Joel is desperate. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Why can't he accept that the lack of leads someone to a position? Seriously, if you're looking to get into apologetics, don't waste any money on the Think Institute. At this point, even William Lane Craig or Frank Turek might be a better option. And even then, that is scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Well, for one thing, they're highly contradictory claims in the Bible.
Okay, like for example?
Well, that Jesus was born.
Jesus goddamn Christ.
Matthew said that Jesus was born during the days of Herod, and Luke says that Jesus was born after Quirinius annexed Judea from
Jesus goddamn fucking Christ.
Herod.
Jesus goddamn Christ.
Pay his tribute.
Okay.
We know that.
Where did it say that? Sorry, I want to look that up. Where does it say that?
The first few verses of Matthew says that Jesus was born in the days of Herod. The first few verses of Luke say that Jesus was born during the census of Quirinius.
What kind of apologist doesn't know the Bible? Oh, yeah, this is basically every Christian who only reads the good bits or the bits that make sense to them. One of my favourite contradictions that still has people defending it is when Jesus apparently ascended to heaven. Luke says it's on the day of the resurrection, Acts says 40 days later, and still Christians try to say that it all makes sense.
Now we know when Herod lived, and we know when Quirinius annexed Judea.
Okay.
Herod, according to Josephus, Herod died in 4 BC. The annexation of Judea by Quirinius was in 680.
Okay. So yeah, there is an explanation for this.
Yeah, there are a lot of ad hoc explanations.
Yeah.
So they're posited completely without evidence.
Yeah, well, it's not without evidence, obviously.
We
have these two. We've got these two historical accounts, and
Jesus goddamn Christ.
Your problem is that whatever I say to explain, like while there was a stint of Quirinius being the governor earlier, like that's here's the problem. I asked you for evidence for atheism. You're trying to tell me that you have found what you believe to be an irreconcilable contradiction in the Bible. But that's not positive evidence for atheism. So,
look how flustered he got. It's not positive evidence for atheism because that's not how it works. It is, however, a point to show how silly the stories of gods are, and in this instance, the magic floating man of Christy Box, and yet another reason not to accept the claims that it exists.
What I'm going to ask you is that, and I'm going to keep asking until you can produce something.
Okay.
Your criteria is evidence and no violations of the laws of logic. I'm going to ask you not only for the evidence for atheism, but also I'm going to ask you to ground your assumption that evidence is a meaningful concept and that the laws of logic are actually real, such that it's a problem to have a contradiction.
Well, there you have it. It's not a problem for Christians to have contradictions. Seems like they'll believe anyway, thus throwing out the need for logic. Come on, Joel. Stop trying to play smart and listen to what you're saying.
So go ahead. I don't care where you want to start.
Jesus goddamn, Jesus goddamn fucking goddamn Christ. Jesus goddamn Christ.
I understand what atheism is.
Well, you present it as a neutral position, but I don't grant that.
Atheism is, I reject the claims, all the God claims I've heard so far. I mean, they're all incoherent.
Jesus goddamn
But atheism is not a neutral position. I'm not going to grant you that, my friend. Atheism is a positive claim about what you believe about the world. I'm looking. Your criterion is evidence and no violations of the law.
I know.
Jesus goddamn fucking Christ. Jesus goddamn Christ.
Bingo! He's desperate for Rembrandt to say that there is no God, rather than I'm not convinced there is. Quit shifting the burden of proof, Joel. And you know what? That better be a proper T in there.
That's an interesting statement, but that's not evidence for your position. Do you have evidence for your position?
What do you think my position is?
Your position is that the God of the Bible is not really there. He's not real. Because why?
Well, for many reasons. One is he's
I sell my soul to win this game.
Two, he violates the law of non-contradiction.
Okay,
No,
so
I
now
don't.
we're getting somewhere.
If it's specifically the God of the Christian Bible, then its own words describe it as loving, all-knowing, and all-powerful. But then its actions go against all those things. It didn't seem very loving for killing children, didn't know which houses to skip over, and lost the wrestling match with Jacob. Not to mention, if it was all-knowing, loving, and powerful, it would know what it would take to convince me of its existence. It would want to, because it's all-loving, it would be able to get past even the hardest of hearts and free will, blah, 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 with its ultimate power. Sounds pretty non-existent to me.
So your specific type of atheism you've adopted because you believe that you have found contradictions in the Bible, which would you say it's fair to say
that is fucking
use those contradictions as evidence that your atheism is true?
Suck my dick, bitch. Come on, bitch, move you goddamn son of a bitch. If I can get my goddamn phone up there. I don't sell my soul.
Welcome to the beat, baby, step into my room. Show me how you feel and sink into the mood. If you wanna be the reason, I can be the answer. We can stand together, baby, walk the world together.
Suck my motherfucking dick, bitch.
Let the rhythm take you where you wanna go. Listen to the melody, let it take control. If you wanna be the reason, I can be
Suck
the
my
answer.
fucking dick,
We can
bitch.
stand together, baby, walk the world forever. I wanna feel you. I wanna taste the world we found. I wanna feel you. I wanna breathe you in
Fucking goddamn, goddamn, Jesus fucking goddamn Christ.
baby, listen to a song. Let the music take us as we move along. If you wanna be the reason, I can be the answer. We can stand together, baby, walk the world together.
Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking goddamn Christ.
I wanna feel you.
Jesus fucking goddamn Christ.
I wanna feel
Jesus
you.
goddamn fucking goddamn cunt goddamn
I
Christ.
wanna breathe you in right now.
Jesus goddamn
I wanna
Christ.
feel you. I wanna taste the world we found.
Jesus goddamn fucking goddamn Christ. Jesus goddamn Christ. Jesus goddamn fucking Christ.
With you
Jesus
in my life, we can fly the world together.
Jesus goddamn fucking goddamn
With you
goddamn
in my life, we can fly the world together. The world together. The world together. The world together. And the world together. I wanna taste the world we found. I wanna feel you.
Come on, you cunt.
I wanna breathe you in
God
right now.
fucking damn it.
I wanna feel you. I wanna taste the world we found.
God
I wanna feel you. I wanna breathe you in right now.
goddamn son of a goddamn bitch. God fucking God Christ fuck. Christ or God fuck.
Here's a guy who thinks miracles are possible.
Christopher Hitchens often truly painted his debate opponents out to be enemies of science. He'd often ask, do you really believe that Jesus was born of a virgin? Do you really believe that he rose from the dead? If the Christian answered yes, Hitchens would then turn to his audience and say, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, my opponent has just demonstrated that science has done nothing for his worldview. Hitchens was following the reasoning of the 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume. David Hume famously argued that no testimony is sufficient to establish a miracle, unless the testimony is of such a kind that its falsehood would be more miraculous than the fact which it endeavors to establish.
A miracle is a purported violation of a law of nature. This is impossible by definition because a law of nature is defined as a regularity that is never violated. If you ever see a violation of a law of nature, that would just mean that it wasn't really a law.
Hume was so confident about this principle that he said, I flatter myself that I have discovered an argument which, if just, will, with the wise and learned, be an everlasting check to all kinds of superstitious delusion, and consequently will be useful as long as the world endures.
Well, yeah. Why is it not perfectly reasonable to treat any testimony about anything as suspect unless the occurrence of the purported event were more probable than one of the many ways in which testimony can be incorrect? If somebody tells you anything about any subject, not just miracles, there's always the possibility that said person is lying, mistaken, or delusional. When weighing the likelihood that what they are saying is true, you should always estimate whether the truth of what they are saying is more probable than any of those potential fallibilities inherent to testimony.
So, yeah, Hume was quite the humble guy. Hume argued that a wise person should always proportion his beliefs according to the best possible evidence. When it comes to evidence, we know from experience that human testimony can often be wrong. People can lie or believe they saw things that just weren't there. On the other hand, we have boatloads of evidence from our everyday experience that nature's laws are well established. Every second of the day, more evidence accumulates for supposing the laws of nature aren't violated. The cat knocks your glass off the desk, that's more evidence for the laws of gravity. You turn on your flashlight, and the chemical energy of the batteries is converted into electrical energy, which is converted into light and heat energy, proving again that the law of conservation of energy works. Or think about this. Every single person that you know is the result of sexual reproduction and not an immaculate conception. And every person that you're aware of that died and remained dead is evidence that dead people stay dead. So according to Hume's logic, you're going to need a ginormous pile of evidence to overcome all the evidence. Every person that you're aware of that has died and has remained dead and not an immaculate conception. And every person that you're aware of that has died and has remained dead is evidence that dead people.
I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
If you watched the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon back in the day, you probably remember how it started. 6 innocent kids go on a fun little ride at an amusement park. And then boom, they're suddenly sucked into some mysterious fantasy world full of dragons, demons, and dark magic. But what if that was their last ride? Yep, there's a theory that's been floating around the internet for years. And once you hear it, you'll never look at this cartoon the same way again. This theory says the kids died on that roller coaster, and everything after was just some kind of purgatory. A limbo, a psychological test they could never truly escape from. And the more you re-watch the show with that in mind, the more it makes a gloomy kind of sense. Stick around till the end to find out which part of this is the most disturbing. Oh, and if you want to re-watch it for yourself, I dropped a the most disturbing. Oh, and if you want to re-watch it for yourself, this is
we spit Hoosie.
Is the most disturbing. Oh, and if you want to re-watch it for yourself, I dropped a link in the description where you can grab the full DVD set. You'll need it after this. Let's get into it.
Hand over your weapons.
So you're the guy wanting payment?
Indeed. And my payment is due now.
What if the very first moment of the show was actually the moment of death? The series kicks off with 6 kids. Hank, Eric, Diana, Sheila, Presto, and little Bobby. boarding a Dungeons & Dragons themed ride at a local amusement park. They're excited, carefree. It's supposed to be a fun time. But when the ride starts, things spiral fast. The roller coaster speeds out of control. A vortex opens in the sky. The track seemingly disappears into a void. The kids in the dust. The roller coaster speed. When the ride starts, things spiral fast. The roller coaster speeds out of control. A vortex opens in the sky. The track seemingly disappears into a void. The kids scream as they're sucked into a blinding light. And then suddenly, cut to black. Next thing we see, they're in an entirely... Suddenly, cut to black. Next thing we see, they're in an entirely different reality. But here's the thing, we never see them actually transported. There's no portal effect, no visual transition, no comforting explanation. It's violent, abrupt, traumatic. The theme park setting vanishes in an instant, and what replaces it is a hellscape. Fiery skies, barren wastelands, giant demons, blood-red suns. It feels less like Narnia and more like a descent into hell. Now think about this. What if that final scream from the kids on the roller coaster was their last moment alive? What if they never made it off the ride? And everything that follows is not just a fantasy journey, but their souls thrown into a distorted, punishing realm. Scared yet? But this isn't just about the ride, because once you see where they landed, it gets even darker.
There is one chance, my children, if you will give me your weapons.
This is all just some kind of a test, isn't it, Dungeon Master? I mean, you are gonna save us.
Why does this magical realm look, sound, and feel like the afterlife's waiting room? The world they enter is called the Realm. But let's be honest, it looks more like a nightmare than any magical kingdom. It's filled with abandoned castles, cursed forests, eerie silence, and creatures that seem pulled from the depths of subconscious terror. There is no safety here. Everywhere they go, something is trying to kill them. Towns are burned out. Monsters appear with no reason. The laws of nature are broken, and time doesn't seem to work right. And there's no indication that this is a real, functioning world. No economy, no stable civilization, no children. Just twisted versions of medieval despair. Even the good characters feel wrong, either powerless or cryptic. There's never a true friend, only momentary allies who disappear without warning. Every episode follows the same cruel pattern. They find a possible way home, they risk their lives to reach it, and in the final seconds, it collapses. Or they get tricked, or the Dungeon Master says, "Not yet." It's a cycle, a brutal, repetitive loop.
You must realize that everything touches everything else. Every action has its own consequence. There is a universal balance.
How many of you wanted to throw something at the TV each time this happened? The more you watch it, the more it feels like each episode is a trial, a test of morality, of strength, of guilt. That's not an adventure. That's a punishment. And this theory argues that the realm isn't a place they were sent to live out an epic quest. It's where their souls landed. A metaphysical space designed to force them to confront their inner demons over and over and over. But what makes this theory really convincing is how each character's role seems perfectly engineered to torture them from the inside out. What if their magical weapons were actually curses designed to expose their greatest fears? Let's go character by character, because the deeper you look, the more it seems like each kid has been assigned a personalized torment. Quick reminder here, folks. This was a show for kids. For kids. Listen to this. Hank becomes the leader, the noble ranger with the magical bow. But the moment he takes charge, he's burdened with every life or death decision.
It wasn't a fake, and if you don't do exactly as I say, we may never see Bobby again.
Where are you taking us?
There!
When they fail, it's on him. His punishment is eternal responsibility, without guidance or success. Talk about a lot of weight to carry. Eric is the cavalier, wealthy, sarcastic, and terrified of danger. His weapon? A useless shield. He never gets to attack, only to defend. He's forced to be brave despite his cowardice, and humiliated for his fear. Diana is strong, agile, a natural warrior, but she's always the first into battle. Never a break, always protecting others. Her punishment? Carrying the weight of physical survival in a world where nothing rests. Presto has magic, but it always backfires. He's intelligent, but insecure. His punishment? Unlimited potential he can never control. He watches spells fizzle, explode, or harm his friends. He's a living metaphor for self-doubt. Sheila can turn invisible, but she's already shy, already afraid of being forgotten.
I went to the orc camp. I saw Hank. He was talking with the orcs. They were planning our camp to the orc camp.
Spit, Hoosie.
I saw Hank. He
Hoosie.
was talking with the orcs. They were planning our camp to the orc camp. I saw Hank. He was
She's a Hoosie girl.
talking with the orcs. They were planning our capture. He's
Jesus
working
goddamn
with them
fucking
now.
Christ.
Her power makes her worst fear a reality. She's unseen, unheard, slipping away even among her friends.
Jesus goddamn
Bobby is
fucking
just
Christ.
a child, but he's given a war hammer and the job of protecting
Jesus
others.
fucking Christ.
His innocence is weaponized. He screams in fear more than he roars in bravery. And
Jesus
then there's
fucking
Uni,
Christ.
the unicorn who whimpers, panics, and constantly gets left behind.
Goddamn game, you
A creature symbolic of Bobby's innocence, slowly chipped away episode by episode. These roles aren't random, they're assignments. Each child is forced to live inside their own psychological nightmare. I can't believe more people didn't have nightmares about this stuff. And the one guiding them? Well, he's not as kind as he seems. What if Dungeon Master isn't a wise guide, but the warden of their spiritual prison?
Do not let your anger control you. Course you are taking can only lead to ruin.
Dungeon Master is an enigma. He appears and disappears at will. He knows every detail about every creature, every danger, and every location in the realm. Yet he never warns them, never saves them. Instead, he gives cryptic clues, half-truths, puzzles with missing pieces. He watches them suffer, fall apart, nearly die. And when they ask him for help, he smiles and says things like, "The answer lies within you." Come on, really? What is that? Just tell us how to get out of here. Some fans believe Dungeon Master is not their guide to